न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अयो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वेदा विनाशिनं नित्यं जयेन मजमव्ययम् कथं सा पुरुषः पार्थ कं घातयति हन्तिकम् वासंसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यन्यानि संजाति नवानि देहि.
Okay, we can pause there. We can pause the audio there. So, chapter 2, Bhagavad-gītā, Arjuna has presented his bewilderment to Krishna. And, Bhagavad-gītā, it, like as I understand, the original manuscript, the earliest manuscript of Bhagavad-gītā, there's no chapter titles. And so that the titles for the chapters were something that came later by various scholars. And there is a set of chapter titles which are used, they're more or less universal for each chapter, but there are some differences. Like our edition, for the most part, uses the titles that are it's like the universal set, but a few chapter titles are different. So this second chapter in our edition, Srila Sridhar Maharaj and Srila Govinda Maharaj's edition, the title that's been given is Sankhya Yoga, the constitution of the soul. But the other title, which is used a little more universally, is I'm thinking of the title for the first chapter. In our edition, it's called Sainya Darshan, which is quite straightforward. Sainya is referring to the armies, so observing the armies. But more traditionally, this title for the first chapter is Vishada Yoga, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, I think also, which means this Vishada is referring to distress. So Vishada Yoga, it's showing how like Arjuna being in this situation of bewilderment and distress, it's leading him to enlightenment, right? So that's where the yoga comes in, which is interesting because we will often face that situation in our lives. That's often the catalyst, right, for spiritual progress, that we're facing some difficulty, some challenge, and we realize that we're limited by our own understanding and capability. So we need to turn to some higher authority, a higher source of knowledge, right? We have to go beyond the mundane. We need spiritual vision in order to face this situation, right? And so this is what's happening here with Arjuna, right? He's realizing I can't handle this situation with my own resources, my own inner resources and my own understanding. I'm unable. I've hit a wall and I need help, right? So there's this quest for spiritual vision that's born out of this distressing, bewildering situation. And so Arjuna's taking that position of a disciple before Krishna, asking for his divine guidance, divine counsel. And then Bhagavad Gita is coming from that, right? And then Krishna's beginning the conversation with this foundational understanding. Before we go into anything deeper, we need to understand the basis here, which is that we are eternal souls. That's the foundational. Unless you can understand that, nothing really means anything when it comes to spiritual discussion. That's the building block. That's the very foundation of the whole discussion. So Krishna is beginning with that, beginning with this foundational understanding that we are Atma, we are eternal souls, and elaborating on what is the nature of the soul. And this verse 20 is really nice. The soul is neither born nor dies. It has neither been nor will it be created, because it is unborn and eternal. It is ever youthful yet ancient. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. So we left off on that verse last week. So then we can read the translation here, 21, 22. O Partha, Arjuna, another name for Arjuna, knowing the soul to be indestructible, eternal, birthless, and immutable, how can a person kill or cause anyone to be killed? Right? So that's the first argument that Krishna makes to Arjuna. Right? You are going through all this lamentation, but you're missing the fundamental point that we are all eternal beings. There's no question of you killing anyone. There's no question of anyone being killed by you. So you can scroll to the next page. And that verse 22, sorry, can you just scroll up again? The Sanskrit for 22. This is this 22, Vasamsi Jirnani Yata Vihaya Navani Granati Naroparani Tata Shirirani Vihaya Jirnan Yanyani Samyati Navani Dehi. This is, many of you will know this verse. This is a very well-known and often quoted verse. It's a verse that Srila Govinda Maharaj liked to quote. And it gives a very nice illustrative analogy, right? Changing your clothes, right? We can scroll down to the translation for 22, can scroll down. So as a person adopts new garments, discarding those that are old and worn, similarly, the soul continues to adopt new bodies, leaving those that are old and useless. So it's a very simple analogy that we can all relate to, right? At the end of the day, we put our old, dirty, worn out clothes to the side. The next day we put on some fresh, clean clothes, right? So the same way, this body, right? We're all born with a nice, fresh, wrinkle-free, and usually disease-free body, although not in all cases. But over time, that body is growing, maturing, and ultimately diminishing and becoming old and wrinkled and sick, and so on. And then is eventually so worn out, it has to be left aside, and we move into another body according to our karma. So it's a very simple analogy that we can all relate to. And I think, you know, it's something that many seekers, you know, they will experience these like eureka moments, you know, where they'll look in the mirror and think, hang on, like, who is the I within me? Like, this body is changing, right? It's something that we all experience, you know, that, you know, now I'm 30, now I'm 40, now I'm 50, and I'm seeing the face is changing, the body is changing, the hair is changing, but the I is the same, you know. So who is that I? You know, and for those who have any type of spiritual sense, it's just logical. It's a simple thing to understand that there's an element within me that is distinct from this body that's changing, right? And there are those, you know, who cannot accept that. And, you know, they go so far as to spend thousands of dollars in plastic surgery and so on, because they can't accept that fact, right? That I need the I in me to match the body, right? I still feel like I'm 20, so I need my body to match that. And they cannot accept that the body is something external. The body is something that's going to change, and the real person is within. So you know, but it's an interesting moment that I think any sincere seeker will experience in their life, just feeling this clarity, looking in the mirror and realizing, you know, that person within is completely distinct. That is something separate. And so this verse is giving that reflection here. Okay, so we can continue with verse 23.
Nainang chindanti shastrani, nainang dahati pavaka, na chainang kledayantapu, न शोषयति मारुतः आसिद्धूयमदाच्छूयम् अक्लिद्धूषस्यैव च नित्यः सर्वगतः स्थाणुरचलूयं सनातनः अव्यक्तूयमचिन्तूयम् अविकार्यूयमुच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वैनं नानुशोचितुमर्हसि.
We can pause. Yeah, perfect. So weapons were 23. Weapons cannot pierce the soul, and fire cannot burn it. Water cannot wet it, and air cannot dry it. It is said that the soul is indivisible and cannot be burned, moistened, or dried. It is eternal. It reaches all planes, yet remains still, immovable, and ever present. It is imperceptible, inconceivable, and untransformable by the sixfold transformations. And we can scroll down, there should be a footnote now. What are those sixfold transformations? Birth, existence, growth, maturity, diminution, because at a certain point you start shrinking. I remember being quite struck by that the way that's described, right? That you in the beginning of your life you're maturing and evolving and growing, and then at a certain point the opposite starts happening, right? You start shrinking and degrading and deteriorating. So diminution and destruction, these are the sixfold transformations. Therefore, knowing the nature of the soul as such, there is no reason to lament for it. And it's a very it's a very nice reflection, that because actually the soul has so much power, and we are easily discouraged, right, by the limitations of our body at times, but the soul is powerful. I remember our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, used to make the point, that same Atma that is activating an ant is the same Atma that's activating an elephant, a great powerful elephant. So the Atma is very strong, right? It's simply how it may be, how much limitation is over it in the particular body that it is inhabiting. So we can take some strength in that, right? That no matter how frail or fragile we may think we are at times, the soul within is actually of such a powerful nature. So we can pick up with verse 26.
अथ चैनं नित्यजातं नित्यं वा मन्यसे मृतं तथा वित्तं महाबाहो नैनं शोचतिमर्हसि यातस्यै ध्रुवो मृत्युर्ध्रुवं जन्म मृतस्य च तस्मादपरिहार्यादे न तं शोचितुमर्हसि अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत अव्यक्त निधनान्येव तत्र का परिदेवना.
And, O best of warriors, even if you think that the soul is perpetually subject to birth and death, you still have no reason to lament. For one who is born, death is certain, and for one who dies, he must be reborn to undergo the reactions of his past actions. Therefore, you should not lament over the inevitable. O Bharata, when all living beings are unmanifest before birth, manifest between birth and death, and again unmanifest at death, why lament for them? We can continue. Oh, this is a very nice verse. Srila Sridhar Maharaj quotes this verse sometimes.
आश्चर्यवत् पश्यति कश्चिदेनम् आश्चर्यवद् वदति तथैव चन्न आश्चर्यवत् चन्नमन्नः शृणोति श्रुत्तापेनं वेद न चैव कश्चित् देहि नित्यमबुद्धूयं देहि सर्वस्य भारत तस्मात् सर्वाणि भूतानि नत्तं शोचितुमर्हसि स्वधर्ममपि चावेक्ष न विकम्पितुमर्हसि धर्माद्धि युद्धात् श्रेयोन्नत् क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते.
So this is a very nice verse, 29. This ascharya, the word ascharya means something wonderful or astonishing. And so it's a very like poetically charming verse, you know, ascharya-vad-pashyati. Pashyati is referring to seeing. So, you know, this verse is saying like any sort of contact or exposure or even just consideration of the soul is a wonderful thing. You know, any type of experience or contemplation on the soul, on the nature of the soul, is a wonderful thing, is an astonishing thing. So to see that soul, ascharya-vad-pashyati, to see that soul is an astonishing thing. Ascharya-vad-vadati, vadati is referring to speaking. So some see it, some have direct experience and see the astonishing nature of the soul. Some speak on that astonishing nature of the soul, and then others are hearing about it. Shrinnoti is referring to hearing. Ascharya-vakshain and yashrinnoti. So some see the soul as astonishing, some describe it as astonishing, some hear of it as astonishing, while others, though hearing about it, know nothing of it. And there's one place Srila Sridhar Maharaj is speaking on this point, and he says, you know, that if we can come to have some experience of the soul, you know, have some small touch of the nature of our soul, he says our progress will become so much more intensified, right? Because we will have our own touch of that. You know, we hear about all these spiritual divine things, you know, but when we actually get some little peep or some little brush of that higher reality, then suddenly it all becomes more tangible, like it's in our hand. Oh, yes, this is real. I've had my own experience of it. And that may be a touch that we all feel in some quiet moment of our lives, you know, in some meditation, some prayer, or some, you know, kirtan. You know, we all, otherwise I don't think any of us would be here. You know, everyone's had some, even if it's just for a split second, you know, had some touch of that. And when you have those touches, you know, you get so much encouragement that, oh, yes, this is real. This isn't just something I've heard about from my gurus, but this is something real that or read about in the books, right? But I'm touching and feeling this, and then our the intensity with which we will put ourselves into our practice, it will increase so much, you know. So it is very precious to have those brushes, we can say, those brushes with reality, the beautiful. And then some time may pass and, oh, did that really happen? Or what was that, you know? And then we may doubt that, you know. Then again, some touch will come and that confirmation will come. Oh, yes, that is real. And that is the true reality. That is the eternal reality, not the temporary reality that we're perceiving in our, you know, day-to-day lives. But there's some deeper reality within. And ultimately, we want to fully live in that deeper eternal reality. So it's a very, very beautiful verse. Then verse 30, O Bharat, the soul dwelling within the bodies of all living beings is eternal and cannot be slain. Therefore, you need lament for no one. Moreover, considering your natural duty, you have no reason to waver, since there is no action more auspicious for a warrior than a battle for justice. So this is one of the themes, right, of Bhagavad-GÍTÁ, that of Dharma, right, that we all have to ascertain what is our particular Dharma, our own particular duty and path, and give ourselves to that, right? And there are also different ways in which that can be understood, right? There's one place in Gita where it's indicated, you know, that, and there's a nice purport there from Bhaktivinoda Thakur also further elaborating on this point, that we can conceive that we all have two dharmas, we have our worldly dharma, our particular duties in the world, right? And whatever that may be, our duties to family, society, and so on. But then above and beyond that, there's our spiritual dharma, the dharma of the soul, right? And that is our duty to the Lord as eternal, loving servitors of the Lord. So, and then also within each of those, everyone has their own particular, everyone has their own unique expression and place within those two dharmas as well. So this is one theme that comes up again and again in Gita, that we have to understand what is our dharma and to stick to that. That is good for us, that is good for the environment, good for our progress overall. So in this case, the direct meaning here, right, is Krishna saying, you're a kshatriya, right, within the varnashrama system, the social religious system of India. Arjuna has this role as a kshatriya, a warrior, and so it is his duty to fight a battle of righteousness for the good of all, for the collective good of society. So you cannot be sentimental here and say you don't want to fight, that your duty is to fight. You have to accept what is your duty. Okay, I think we can continue, and we can take a pause. Does anyone want to make any comment or question, or maybe Suvasni Didi wants to share some insight? Anything?
I don't have anything to add to Shaka, so I'm just listening in the background. It's very nice.
Oh, here, this verse here, this is actually the exact verse I was thinking of, speaking about these two duties. Yeah. Okay, Suvasni Didi, thank you. Please, any time you want to say something, please.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So this is the verse, verse 32, where there's this purport addressing this point that we just discussed. And this, but hang on. But that commentary is actually, yes, I'll read that commentary before we go to 32, because that commentary is on the verse that we just read. And then this 32, that's a really nice verse too. There's a lot to be said about that verse. So this commentary is on the verse that we just finished, that where Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to follow your dharma as a kshatriya. So and can you just scroll down? Is this from Bhaktivinoda Thakur or is no, this is Srila Sridhar Maharaj. There's another one from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'm mixing it up. So commentary, this is from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. One's natural duty or swadharma is of two types: relative or absolute, right? So the relative here is referring to our duty within our temporary reality, right? As men, women, as parents, children, and whatever role we may have, as a teacher, as a bus driver, or president, or whatever it may be. We all have some particular duty within our relative position in this world. But then the absolute is referring to our nature as souls, our existence as eternal souls. And what is the duty of the soul? What is the nature of the soul? To have its loving relationship of service with the Lord, right? So that is our duty from the absolute, and that is our nature from the absolute perspective. So one's natural duty or swadharma is of two types, relative or absolute, according to the soul's state of either material bondage or liberation, respectively. In the liberated state, the natural function of the soul is purely spiritual devotional service for the transcendental pleasure of the Supreme Lord alone. But in the state of material bondage, a person's natural duty possesses mundane attributes. The conditioned soul accepts various births throughout the 8,400,000 species of life, according to his actions, until by the influence of piety he obtains a human birth. Then according to his nature, he may adopt a position and prescribe duty in the God-centered socio-religious system, Daiva Varnashrama, which helps one attain the natural duty of the liberated state. And for anyone who's not familiar, so Varnashrama, I think everyone here is familiar with. Varnashrama is referring to this social religious system of Vedic India, which places everyone in a particular role in society according to their nature. That's the idea behind it, right? So there's the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras, the spiritual scholar class, the warrior class, the agricultural and business class, merchant class. Then there's the worker, laborer class. Then there's the different stages of life, right? Of living as like a student life, a celibate student, brahmachari life. There's marriage life. There's sannyas life, renunciation life, renounce life, and so on. So according to one's stage in life and according to one's nature, they're placed in this system accordingly. But then, our gurus, they sometimes use these terms Daiva Varnashrama or Asura Varnashrama. So Daiva Varnashrama means like God-centered, because that's the real idea of this Varnashrama, that it's meant to be a system that puts God at the center and helps everyone gradually evolve, right? So they have some material nature and they have some wholesome way of expressing it. Like let's say the Kshatriya, the warrior class, they have some like fighting spirit. Well, use that in a healthy way that helps society. So you'll be classed as a Kshatriya. You have to protect society, right? That's the idea. But then the idea is that in the center of that, you're putting God. And so the idea is that this whole system is to help you move closer towards the Lord. But then there's also an expression of it, and that's referred to as asura, demonic varnashrama, where it's just very focused on, and that's more or less how it's played out in the world today, where it's just kind of like a system of hierarchy and exploitation and just really focused on, bloodline and who's superior to others. And it really has nothing to do with trying to make progress spiritually, right? So these are like two ways in which varnashrama can play out in the world. But as it is saying here, ideally what we want is this Daiva Varnashrama, this God-centered social system. Okay, so we go back here. In this respect, the natural duty of the liberated soul is somewhat covered by the relativity of the material world. Yet within the God-centered socio-religious system, it is nonetheless considered a person's natural duty. As, for example, smoke-covered fire is still considered fire, despite its covering. Ramananda Prabhu, did you put your hand up? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to ask something actually.
When
it
yes.
says Supreme Lord alone, so that means Radha Krishna or just Krishna alone?
Oh, well, as Srila Maharaj just said, when we say Krishna, we don't really mean Krishna, right? When you say Krishna, that really means a system. So that means not only Radha and Krishna, but also their associates. Like Srila Maharaj has said, like if you say the king, it doesn't just mean like if you say, oh, the king's coming to lunch, then that includes, the king's consort, the bodyguards, the personal secretaries, the driver. There's a whole group that's included. It's not just that the king's coming for lunch, right? So I would say the reason Srila Sridhar says alone here is to mean, not polluted with our own individual selfish material interest, but for the satisfaction of the Lord and his own, right? I would say that's the distinction that's being made here. So Krishna means Radha, Krishna, and their Nija Jan, their own people, their entourage. So for their satisfaction, not for
Thank
our
you.
own satisfaction. Okay. So yes. And so we already discussed that, right? This concept that we all have these two types of duty. And we could also say it's kind of like something that we have to juggle, right? Well, some more than others, right? We cannot fully in our current state, we cannot fully devote ourselves to either, right? If we're trying to make advancement, then we have to consider both of these. And of course, our main focus is on the spiritual side. We want that to be the case, right? That we want to move closer in our relationship with the Lord. That's our most important duty, right? But at the same time, we have to survive in the world. We have to wear clothes, we have to eat food, and we have to be able to pay bills, and so we have to consider these other things, and we also have different obligations, right, to take care of family members. So we cannot pretend, we can't pretend to be like Shukadev Goswami, who just lives naked in the forest eating berries, right? Like that's a very, very rare person who can authentically do that, right? If it's real. It's very interesting. I really like this one talk of Gurudev where he was discussing some verses and in Bhagavad-GÍTÂ, and someone asked our Gurudev this question, saying, like the way modern society's going, it's so exploitative, and we use so many resources, and we're destroying the environment. And do you think we should all just go back to living really simple lives in the forest? And this was the question. And our Gurudev's answer was so wonderful because it was very open. Like he wasn't taking a particular like stance on it. Like he wasn't saying, yes, we should be ecological warriors, and he wasn't saying like, no, we don't need to do that. But what I loved his answer. He said, if you can do that in an authentic way, like without hypocrisy, he said, then you can do that. I thought that was such a wonderful answer because he was just looking at the intention, because that's actually how the Paramahamsa Vaishnavas, how the great souls are seeing things. They're living in consciousness. They're not living in this external plane of, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, or you're creating this disturbance, you're making that, you're destroying this. They're not looking at the external factors, but they're looking at the consciousness. So our Gurudev's like, yeah, if you can authentically go and live in the forest and live on berries and live with wood huts, without internet and whatever, right? Live on a straw mat. If you can authentically do that, then you can do that. Very nice, but it should be real. It shouldn't be like you're imitating the way that the Goswamis used to live in Vrindavan, right? That, oh, and have this arrogance, right? Oh, I'm such a great being, I'm living on berries, right? It should be something authentic, that you can authentically live like that. It's a genuine thing, right? So I thought that was a wonderful answer. Yeah. So generally the advice we're given is, do what you need to do to live in the world as you need to live. Like have some basic level of comfort, so that you don't have to think about it too much, right? If you put yourself in an extremely uncomfortable environment, you're just going to be thinking about that, right? And you can't focus on your spiritual practice. You're just going to be thinking, I'm too hot, I'm too cold, the bed's too hard, or whatever, right? So have some basic level of comfort so you're not even thinking about it, and give your maximum energy to your spiritual practice. And so in order to do that, we all have to have some presence in the world in some way of setting ourselves up, right? And again, we have duties to family members and so on, right? Generally speaking. So then we have these two layers of duty. But there is a bit of a juggle, right? And we have to know we don't want our material dharma to take over, right? To become a distraction. We want to keep in mind that our spiritual duty is principal, right? Because at the end of the day, we are eternal souls, and as we've been discussing, these bodies are going to wither up and die. So what then? You know, we need to keep the big picture in mind. And ultimately, it's about love, right? That's an even higher consideration, that our real dharma is love. Our highest dharma is that of love. Love for the Lord. We want to ultimately be consumed by that. And then it's not even about duty or, oh, I should do this or I should do that, but it's about awakening this natural loving spirit and loving relationship. And from that perspective, it's just about not missing out, right? Like there's this big, wonderful, beautiful world out there. There's this wonderful dance going on with the reality, the beautiful, and we're missing out, you know, like it's FOMO, it's a big FOMO, you know, like from that perspective, we could say our spiritual practice is about fear of missing out, right? I don't want to miss out on that. Like there's this incredible, beautiful, dynamic, loving reality going on, and I'm really missing out. Let's not waste any more time. Let me catch up. Like we got a lot of catching up to do. But you know, now we're kind of like, we got to go learn. We're like at the kindergarten level. We got to like learn the basics before we can get to the part of like joining the dance, right? Just like you know, for someone to become a ballerina, first you have to go through the boring stuff, right? Of discipline and training, and you know, but once you get through that, then you get to really like enjoy the music and enjoy the dance, right? So we're kind of like in that stage now where we have to like, you know, beat our minds a little bit and do the practice and do the discipline. But at a certain point, we will awaken what's already within us, and we'll be able to join that wonderful, beautiful dance and that beautiful music that is going on, right? There's a beautiful quote of Srila Govinda Maharaj where he's saying that wherever we are within our material position, that transcendental reality is always waiting for us. You know, I really like to think of that sometimes. Like whatever hang up I'm going through, like whatever BS is going through my head or my life, whatever like ridiculous thing I'm putting myself in mentally or physically, there's a big, beautiful world out there that's waiting for me. And it's like, whenever you're ready, you can join us. You know, like whenever you're through your whole mental thing and your concocted thing that you're going through that's completely ridiculous and unnecessary. You know, that's another funny point, right? This word anartha, you cannot, this anartha is the word that we use, right, for our material weaknesses, right? Our material failings. But another way you can understand it is that which is not necessary, which has no necessity, right? The word artha. It can also mean the word artha can also mean meaning. So anartha means that which has no meaning or that which has no necessity. So it's like all the head trips and all the stuff we go through and all the suffering, and it's all actually just unnecessary, you know, just like a madman, you know, or someone with like some paranoid mental thing. It's just unnecessary. It's just a mental space that they put themselves in, but doesn't actually have any real deep-seated meaning, right? It's something concocted that they put themselves into, but it's actually just not necessary, you know? So in the same way, that's more or less how we live a lot of the time. You know, we're living in some mental construct that is not necessary. But meanwhile, there's this beautiful, eternal, divine world of love and beauty and joy and play that's always going on. And it's always there, and it's always just waiting for us, you know. So it's like our gurus, you know, the Lord, his associates, they're extremely patient, and they're very welcoming, and they're just waiting, you know. Whenever you're ready, you know, whenever you're ready, you can look up and see the light, you know, the light shining. You just have to open your eyes to it. That's all. It's not that it wasn't there before. It's always there. Whenever you're ready, you know, you can join that, you know. So we are in the process now of purification, right? Cleansing the mental layers that are separating us from that beautiful reality. Once that cleansing stage is through, once those layers have been removed, then we can perceive that, right? What is actually very natural and inherent to us. It is not something foreign to us. It is very natural to us. So I don't know, maybe we should pause here because, or we could just go on. We did start a little late. This next verse is also very, very nice and very encouraging verse. We didn't go through 32 yet, the Sanskrit there. This is a really, like, if I had to make a list of like top 10 Bhagavad-Gītā verses, I'd probably put this on the list. It's a really beautiful verse. You know, in the introduction, Srila Maharaj's introduction, there's that beautiful sentence, right, where he's saying Bhagavad-Gītā, it's an amazing paragraph. He describes Bhagavad-Gītā as new life for the dying, and he also says hope for the hopeless. And so this is one of those verses which is very hopeful, very encouraging. Yajjuchaya chopa panam svarga dwaram apavritam sukhina kshatriya parta labante yudam idrisham. It's a wonderful verse, and it's something that, you know, Bhagavad-Gītā is very universal. You know, that's one of the reasons it's become like so widely known in the world and it's read by so many different types of people, you know, all kinds of people, you know, poets and scientists, politicians, and everyone. Gurudev mentioned like anarchists, you know, revolutionaries. Everybody's finding something in Gita. There's something there for everyone. So this is a verse like that too. It's just a verse of like universal encouragement for everyone. So we can go to the translation there for 32. Oh, Partha, you can scroll up. Yeah, it's a bit hidden. It gets a bit confusing because of the commentary in between from the previous verse. Oh, Partha, only the most fortunate warriors are blessed with the opportunity of such a battle, which has come to you like an open door to heaven. So this was like the Vedic setup, you know, it's the part of the universal law, I guess you could say, right? That if somebody dies in a battle of dharma, then they will go to heaven, right? And so Krishna is telling Arjuna, like, this is a win-win situation, right? That, well, then he also elaborates that in the following verses. You know, if you die in this battle, it's not a bad thing. You know, you'll go to heaven because you've died for a good cause. You've died in a battle for good, for righteousness, for trying to uphold justice. So you'll go to heaven, right? So it's not a bad deal, you know. And this is actually an opportunity. This battle, what you're seeing, and so this is how we can apply this in a broader way, right? What you're seeing in front of you as a challenge, what you're seeing in front of you as a death sentence, you know, or something incredibly difficult, what you're seeing as an obstacle is actually an opportunity. This can you go up to the Sanskrit? It's so nice. It's Svarga Dwaram Apavritam. Svarga is a name for heaven, for the heavenly plane. Svarga Dwaram, the door to heaven, Apavritam, is open. You're seeing this as a downer, right? You're seeing this as an obstacle in front of you. This is actually an incredible opportunity. It's like an open door to heaven. This is your chance, right? This is a chance. So Sukhina Kshatriya, you are a fortunate Kshatriya, you're a fortunate warrior that you have this opportunity. So take it on, you know, take it on with the right spirit, with the right vision. Don't be discouraged, don't be disheartened. This is a chance for you to prove yourself. This is a chance for you to grow, right? And so it's a really wonderful, encouraging advice, you know, that we can apply in a practical sense to so many situations that we may be faced with in our lives, right? That you know, we're we're discouraged, we're challenged by various circumstances, but it's actually an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for us to stretch and to gain something ultimately. And so it's a very beautiful, positive vision on the environment, and very practical, very relevant to our daily lives as perhaps struggling practitioners, right? So yeah, it's a really, really wonderful verse. And we can go on to 33. So
यदृच्छया चोपपन्नं सर्गद्वारमपावृतं सुखिनः क्षत्रियाः पार्थ लभन्ते युद्धमीदृशम् अथ चेत्तामिमं धर्म्यं संग्रामं न करिष्यसि ततः सधर्मं कीर्तिं च हित्वा पापमवाप्स्यसि अकृत्तिं चापि भूतानि कथयिष्यन्ति ते भयां सम्भावितस्य चाकृतिर्मरणादतिरिच्यते भयाद्रणादुपरतं म्यङ्सन्ते त्वां महारथा येषां च त्वां बहुमतं भूत्वा यास्यसि लाघवम् अवाच्यवादांश्च बहून् वदिष्यन्ति तवाहिता निन्दन्तस्तव सामर्थ्यं ततो दुःखतरं नु किम्.
okay, so but if you choose not to fight this battle for justice, your religious principles will be lost, fame will desert you, and sin will overcome you. People will speak of your infamy for all time to come, and for the renowned infamy is worse than death. The great warriors who highly honor you will ridicule you, considering that you were afraid to fight. Your enemies will mock you. What could be more painful? And let's go through these last few verses here too.
अतो वा प्राप्स्यसि सर्गं जित्वा वा भक्ष्यसे महीं तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः सुखदुःखे समये कृत्वा लाभालाभौ जयाजयौ ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्य नैवं पापमवाप्स्यसि एषा ते विहिता सांख्ये बुद्धिर्योगे तिमां शृणु बुद्ध्या युक्तो जया पार्थ कर्मबन्धं प्रहास्यसि नेहाभिक्रमणात्.
Right. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, right? That, O son of Kunti, if you are killed, you will attain heaven, and if you are victorious, you will enjoy your life on earth. Therefore, being confident of your success, arise for battle. So win-win, right? You cannot go wrong. And there's one place where Srila Govinda Maharaj is referring to this verse and saying, similarly in our spiritual practice, if we are doing the right thing, we're always right? Like the environment the environment has its own consideration, right? The external environment may say, oh, you've won or you've lost, you got a promotion or you got a demotion. The external world has another way of seeing things. There's another way of considering things from an external point of view. But from a spiritual point of view, if you're always acting according to the right principles, then you always win, right? Although from a material calculation, it may be said you lost, actually you won. Like for example, let's say you tell the truth about some situation, which actually puts you in a difficult situation, right? Puts yourself in a situation to be judged or criticized, but you've actually told the truth, right? And it was appropriate for that situation. Then you've won, right? By external calculations, one may say that you lost, but because you were on the path of righteousness, because you were on the path of truth, then you've won. You're always successful, right? The external world, it is it's this world of duality, right? Good, bad, friends, enemies, rich, poor, and all these things. But the spiritual calculation is different. The spiritual calculation is dependent upon one's consciousness, right? And that Srila Sridharaj likes to mention that example of Lord Ramachandra, right? Lord Ramachandra, it was the eve of his coronation, right? His father, King Dashrath, wanted to make him the king within his own lifetime. And the whole city of Ayodhya is so excited. They're preparing for this coronation. They love King Ram, of course, right? King Ram, he is the Lord himself. How wonderful he is, how attractive, how charming, how righteous and good. Everyone's so excited he's about to become king. And then this whole other situation comes out and he has to go into exile instead, right? For 14 years. But it's mentioned in the Ramayana that when Ramachandra heard this news, oh, this situation has come about, he's being requested to go into exile, it's mentioned the expression on his face did not change, right? For him, it was the same, to be coronated king, to go into the forest in exile, because he's so deeply situated in this consciousness of Dharma, right? That's his reality. And so this external experience, right, of comfort, discomfort, that is very superficial. That had no meaning to him. So to go to the forest or to sit on the throne as king, it was the same to him, because he's so deeply situated in that consciousness. So it is a very powerful way to live, and you will always win. You always win. Just like Ramachandra, someone will say, oh, he had to be exiled. How terrible. But he's living in such a high reality, So there's no loss. It's an infallible position to be in. You cannot lose anything. You already have everything. There's no question of loss. So it is a very powerful way to live, right? You will always win. And then this verse 38 is very powerful. Considering pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat to be one and the same, fight. No sin will be incurred by you. So that's a wonderful meditation, right? To wake up every day with that type of mindset, that I will do whatever my duty is, and whatever gain or loss I make according to material calculation, that is not important. Right? I don't need to invest all of my energy in that. Oh, how much should I gain, or how much should I lose? How many friends did I make? How many friends did I lose? These are all coming and going in this world, right? I won't lose my energy over that. But did I do the right thing? Did I do my duty? Did I act from a plane of righteousness, right? Then that is my happiness, right? That is my inner life. Right? That I did the right thing. What happened externally, that's not important. So considering pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat to be one and the same, fight. That is a very powerful way to live. Very powerful. Nobody can defeat you, actually. There's nothing to be taken from you. You have everything within. So it's a wonderful meditation. Sukha, dukkha, samekra, considering happiness, sadness to be the same. Labha, alabha, gain and loss. Jaya, ajaya, victory and defeat. Considering those the same from an equal vision. Do your duty. Go forward with your duty. That is your only consideration. So very, very nice meditation. I think we can close with that for today. So maybe we can close the screen share and just invite any reflections from everyone here. Any thoughts from anyone? Should we finish there? Suvasanjit, anything you want to share?
Oh, Vishaka, that was beautiful. Nice to hear. That's very nice. Listen.
Okay. Thank you, Tidi.
Thank you so much, Vishaka Didi. Wonderful. Yeah, Srila
Happy-
Gurumai say, so fighting is our life.
Yes.
Yeah, on
Yeah, and
one side, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say in Saraswati Thakur, he gives that explanation that kirtan means a fight, right? Because in a simple way you can say, right, if you're coming into the world and wanting to promote goodness, that's automatically there's gonna be some friction because not everybody is coming with that spirit, right? So if you're coming and saying, oh, I stand for love, right, then that's automatically going to create friction with those who don't stand for love, right? And so if we're coming and wanting to promote the the Lord's interest, promote that higher news and that higher message, that's creating a wave and a current that is going to be in opposition with other currents, right? So from one perspective, it is a fight, right? So there must be some boldness and some strength of spirit to be able to sustain that. We have to be prepared for that.
Thank you so much, Vishaka Didi. You're helping us prepare for that.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, like at a certain point we may realize like, oh, it may even be a surprise, like, oh, not everybody's nice, like, not everybody's nice. And we don't just want to be like, sheep who just go along with whatever's going on in the environment around us, right? We have to sometimes hold firm to our own narrative. And sometimes that means a fight. If we're always just trying to be peaceful, then, that can actually be problematic. What are we being peaceful about? If there's some corruption going on, are we going to be peaceful with that? If there's some wrong going on, sometimes we have to make a stand, right? Humility has its place, right? Srila Sridhar talks about that. We have to have a deeper understanding of what humility means. Sometimes humility means standing up and saying something, right? Like he says when Hanuman sets fire to Lanka, right? Because Sita Devi's been captured by Ravana. He's going to rescue her, help her, and he sets fire to Lanka. Srila Sridhar says his humility is not disturbed, right? So, generally we speak about humility, right? And peace and all these things, but sometimes there has to be some fighting spirit to continue on the path of truth. Sometimes that is required, and we may be tested like that. But it takes some deeper understanding to be able to appreciate and apply these points, right? And of course we all have our own roles, right? And there was that one occasion, right, when there was one Babaji in Vrindavan, he made some arrogant comment about Raghunath Das Goswami, right? Saying, because Raghunath Das Goswami has this one very humble expression where he's saying, oh, he's asking for the blessings of so many great souls. He's asking for the blessings of the Vaishnavas. He mentions the residents of Vrindavan, specifically the Brajabasis. And this one foolish Babaji in Vrindavan, he said, oh, we can bless Raghunath Das Goswami. We are Brajbasis. We are residents of Vrindavan. We can bless, that is our position. We can bless Raghunath Das Goswami. And Srila Saraswati Thakur was in Vrindavan at that time, and he was so disturbed by that, he started to fast. He stopped eating. And he said, until there's some correction, or some, apology for this, then I will not eat anything. You know? And gradually the whole group with him, they started to fast, right? And later on, that Babaji, he was made to understand how foolish he was. He apologized. And then someone asked Saraswati Thakur, you know, like, why did you even pay him any attention? Like, he's just some foolish man, you know. And Saraswati Thakur said, because I am in this position of an acharya, it is my duty to protect the dignity of my gurus. You know, Raghunath Das Goswami, he is our Prayojan Acharya. He has such a high position for us. And it is my duty. I'm riding in this big motor car in Vrindavan, right, in this position of an Acharya. I have to make a stand for these things, right? But he also said, you know, but if I was just living as a simple Babaji, quietly living my life, he said, I would just leave this place. You know, I would, so I didn't have to hear such things. I would just leave, right? So that is another thing, you know, that we, according to our role and our position, then we have an appropriate way to respond to certain events, and we have to consider all these things, right? So, but that's a whole other discussion, right? Okay, well, maybe we'll stop there. Any last comments?
Thank you so much again, Shakadi.
Thank you all for your good company. I'm so happy we can tune into Bhagavad-Gītā like this together. Very grateful. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, ЩРީМАD Bhagavad-Gītā Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai, Jai Suvasini Didi Ki Jai. Dandavat pranams to all of you, and I'll see some of you tomorrow. We'll have our next meeting tomorrow. Okay, Dandavat.
Shakadi ki jai.
Jai Gurudev.
Thank you.